The cold Pacific wind cut across the beach at Coronado Naval Base like a knife. It was 4:30 in the morning and the sky was still black. Waves crashed in the darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, a whistle was about to blow. And when it did, everything would change. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She was 26 years old, 5'7", and 140 pounds of pure determination. She stood in a line with 63 other candidates. All of them were men. All of them were bigger than her. All of them had been watching her since she arrived. She could feel their eyes. She could hear their whispers. She won't make it past the first day. This is a waste of time. Why'd they even let her try? Sarah kept her eyes forward. She didn't flinch. She didn't react. She had heard it all before. In high school, when she told her guidance counselor she wanted to join the military, he laughed. In basic training, when she outran half the men in her unit, they said she got special treatment. At airborne school, when she landed hard and broke her wrist but finished the jump anyway, they called it luck. She was used to being underestimated, but this was different. This was Hell Week. 5.5 days of the most brutal training the U.S. military had to offer. Less than 4 hours of sleep total. Constant cold. Constant wetness. Constant pain. Running, swimming, carrying boats on your head until your spine felt like it would snap. Most men quit. Strong men. Tough men. Men who had trained their whole lives. And she was about to become the first woman to even attempt it. The instructor stepped forward. His name was Senior Chief Granger. He was 6'4", 220 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. He had been a Navy SEAL for 18 years. He had seen war. He had seen blood, and he had never, not once, believed a woman belonged here. He walked slowly down the line of candidates. His boots crunched in the sand. When he reached Sarah, he stopped. "Mitchell," he said. His voice was like gravel. "Yes, Senior Chief," Sarah replied. Her voice was steady. Granger leaned in close. Close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. Close enough that the other candidates could hear every word. "I'm going to make you a promise, Mitchell," he said. "You will quit. You will ring that bell before the sun comes up. And when you do, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that you never belonged here. That this was always a political stunt. That you wasted my time. The Navy's time and the time of every real warrior standing in this line." Sarah's jaw tightened. But she didn't move. She didn't blink. "Do you understand me?" Granger asked. "Yes, Senior Chief." "Good." He stepped back and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "In fact, I'm so confident that Mitchell here will quit, I'm making a new rule. If she's still here at sunrise, if she somehow manages to last 6 hours, I will personally carry her boat for the rest of the day. But that won't happen, because she doesn't have what it takes." Some of the candidates smirked. A few laughed quietly. One man, a tall blonde guy from Texas named Drummond, shook his head in disgust. "This is embarrassing," he muttered. "They're turning the teams into a circus," Sarah heard him. She heard all of them. And somewhere deep inside, a fire ignited. Not anger, not rage. Something colder. Something sharper. Resolve. The whistle blew. "Get wet and sandy," Granger screamed. The candidates exploded into motion. They sprinted toward the ocean. The freezing water hit Sarah like a truck. It drove the air from her lungs. The cold was so intense it felt like her skin was being peeled off. But she didn't hesitate. She dove under a wave, soaked herself completely, then ran back up the beach and threw herself into the sand. Wet and sandy. The sand stuck to every inch of her body. It got in her eyes, her nose, her ears, her mouth. It would stay there for days. "Move! Move! Move!" The instructors screamed. They ran. Miles down the beach in boots and soaked camouflage. The sand pulled at every step. Sarah's legs burned. Her lungs screamed. But she kept pace. She stayed in the middle of the pack. Not first. Not last, smart. Then came the boats. The instructors pointed at 7 black inflatable boats lined up on the beach. Each boat weighed over 200 pounds. The candidates were divided into boat crews. 7 men per boat except Sarah's crew. They only had 6, Mitchell, Granger called out. "Your crew is 1 short. That means you'll have to work harder. Think you can handle that?" "Yes, Senior Chief. We'll see." The boat crews lifted the boats onto their heads. Sarah was positioned at the back left. The weight was crushing. The boat pressed down on her skull like a vice. Her neck bent. Her knees shook. "Move!" The instructors yelled. They ran. Down the beach. Through the soft sand. The boat bounced with every step. It slammed against Sarah's head. Her vision blurred. She tasted blood. But she held on. Drummond was at the front of the boat. He looked back at Sarah and sneered. "Keep up, sweetheart," he said. "Or step aside and let a real sailor take your place." Sarah didn't answer. She just pushed harder. Hours passed. They ran, they did push-ups in the surf. They did flutter kicks until their abs felt like they were tearing apart. They carried the boat. They put the boat down. They picked the boat up again, and Sarah was still there. The sky began to change. Black turned to deep blue. Deep blue turned to purple. The horizon glowed. Sunrise was coming. Granger watched Sarah closely. He expected her to slow down, to fall behind, to cry, to break, but she didn't. Her face was blank. Her eyes were focused. Her movements were mechanical. She was a machine. And Granger realized something that made his jaw tighten. She wasn't going to quit. The sun broke over the horizon at 6:04 in the morning. Golden light spilled across the Pacific Ocean. It touched the waves, the sand, the exhausted faces of the candidates still standing. 47 remained. 16 had already quit. They had rung the bell. That terrible brass bell that sat on a post near the instructor platform. 3 rings and you were done. 3 rings and the pain stopped. But Sarah Mitchell had not rung the bell. She stood with her boat crew, the massive inflatable boat still pressed against her head. Her legs trembled. Her shoulders were raw and bleeding under her uniform. Sand was caked in her hair, her ears grinding between her teeth. She had been awake for over 24 hours. She had been in Hell Week for 6, and she was still here. Granger stood on the platform, arms crossed, watching the sunrise. His face was stone, but inside something twisted, anger, frustration, and something else he didn't want to name. Respect? No, impossible. He grabbed the megaphone. "Boat crews, set down your boats." The candidates lowered the boats with groans of relief. Men collapsed to their knees. Some lay flat on their backs in the sand. Sarah lowered herself slowly into a sitting position. Her whole body shook, but her eyes stayed open, alert. Granger walked down from the platform. His boots hit the sand with purpose. He walked straight to Sarah. The other candidates watched. Her boat crew watched. Everyone knew what was coming. Granger stopped in front of her, looked down. The sun was behind him, putting his face in shadow. "You made it to sunrise," he said flatly. "Yes, Senior Chief," Sarah replied. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "I made a promise." "Yes, Senior Chief." For a long moment, Granger said nothing. The wind blew. The waves crashed. Somewhere down the beach, a seagull cried. Then Granger turned to her boat crew. "Boat crew 2, he barked. "For the next evolution, I will take Mitchell's position." As promised. Drummond's eyes went wide. A few of the other instructors shifted uncomfortably. This had never happened before. An instructor carrying a boat with candidates. But Granger had made a promise in front of everyone. And in the teams, your word was everything. However, Granger continued, his voice dropping to something colder, "I want everyone here to understand something. Mitchell lasted 6 hours, congratulations, but Hell Week is 5.5 days, 132 hours. You've survived less than 5%. The cold hasn't even started. The hallucinations haven't started. The real pain hasn't started." He turned back to Sarah. "You think you proved something. You didn't. You got lucky. And your luck is about to run out." Sarah met his eyes. She didn't speak. She had learned long ago that words didn't matter. "Only actions. On your feet," Granger shouted. "Next evolution. Surf torture." A collective groan rippled through the candidates. Surf torture was exactly what it sounded like. They would sit in the freezing ocean, arms linked, while waves crashed over them, for hours, until their core body temperature dropped, until their lips turned blue, until they couldn't feel their fingers or toes. It was designed to break your mind. The candidates shuffled toward the water. Sarah pushed herself to her feet. Her legs nearly gave out, but she caught herself. She walked to the surf line and sat down in the sand. The water rushed up and swallowed her. The cold was unbelievable. Worse than before. Her body was already exhausted, already depleted. The cold went straight to her bones. Her teeth chattered so hard she thought they might crack. The man next to her was a candidate named Rodriguez. He was shorter than most, muscular, with kind eyes. He had barely spoken to her before now. "Link arms," he said quietly. Sarah linked her arm through his. On her other side was Drummond. He didn't link arms. He kept his distance, his jaw set, his eyes forward. Drummond, Rodriguez hissed. Link up. I'm not holding hands with her, Drummond said. She wants to be here, she can do it on her own. An instructor walked by. Saw the broken link. Boat crew too, he screamed. Why are you not linked? You think you're special? You think the rules don't apply to you? No, instructor, they shouted back. Everyone out! Push-ups, now! The entire boat crew scrambled out of the water and dropped into the sand. Push-ups in the sand, soaking wet after hours of torture. Sarah's arms shook. She could barely lower herself. But she did. 1, 2, 3, faster. The instructor screamed. 10, 15, 20. Sarah's arms gave out. She collapsed face first into the sand. Around her, other men were collapsing too. But the instructor wasn't looking at them, he was looking at her. Mitchell, you think this is hard? You think this is what combat looks like? You're a liability. You're going to get men killed. Sarah pushed herself back up, did another push-up. Her whole body was on fire. You know what your problem is, Mitchell? The instructor continued. You're selfish. You don't care about the team. You only care about making a point. About proving you're equal. But you're not equal. You're weaker, slower, smaller. And because of you, your boat crew suffers. He turned to the rest of boat crew too. How does that feel, gentlemen? Knowing you're being punished because Mitchell can't keep her arms linked? Drummond glared at Sarah. Feels like bullshit, instructor. Then maybe you should encourage her to ring out. The instructor walked away. The boat crew collapsed in the sand, gasping. Drummond rolled over and looked at Sarah with pure hatred. You heard him, Drummond said. You're making us fail. Every time you screw up, we pay for it. This isn't about you anymore. You're dragging down 6 other guys who actually deserve to be here. Sarah stared at the sky. Her chest heaved. I'm not quitting, she said quietly. Then you're selfish, Drummond shot back. You don't care about the team. You only care about yourself, Rodriguez sat up. Back off, Drummond. Excuse me? She made it to sunrise. She's keeping pace. The instructors are targeting her and you know it. She doesn't belong here. Maybe, but she's here. And she's our boat crew, so either help her or shut up. Drummond stood. He pointed a finger at Rodriguez. When she quits, and she will, I'm going to remember you defended her. He walked away. Sarah closed her eyes. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not doubt that she could endure the pain. She could endure anything, but doubt that it mattered. If her own crew hated her, if her presence hurt them, was she being brave? Or was she being selfish? Rodriguez's voice broke through her thoughts. Hey, he said. Don't listen to him. You're doing fine. Sarah opened her eyes. Looked at him, am I? She asked. Rodriguez smiled. It was a tired, broken smile, but it was real. You're still here, he said. That's more than 16 other guys can say. Before Sarah could respond, the whistle blew again. Back in the surf. Now they ran back into the water. The cold swallowed them again. This time Drummond linked arms. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The hours crawled by. The sun climbed higher. They did boat drills. They did runs. They did endless push-ups and sit-ups and flutter kicks. They got wet and sandy again and again and again, and every time Sarah kept up. But Granger was right about one thing. The worst was still coming. Day 2 of Hell Week was worse than the first. The candidates had slept a total of 45 minutes. 45 minutes in 2 days. They had closed their eyes on the cold beach, packed together like sardines. And before they could even fall asleep, the instructors were back with hoses and whistles and screaming. Sarah's world had become a blur of pain. Her feet were shredded, blisters on top of blisters. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. Her hands were swollen and raw from carrying the boat. Her shoulders were hamburger meat. The salt water got into every wound and set her skin on fire. But the physical pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the cold. It never stopped. Even when they ran, even when they did push-ups, the cold stayed inside her, deep in her core. Her body couldn't warm itself anymore. She shivered constantly. Her teeth chattered so hard her jaw ached. Her fingers were white and numb. She couldn't feel her toes, and the cold did something to your mind. It whispered to you. It told you lies. You can't do this. You're going to die here. Just ring the bell. The pain will stop. You'll be warm again. Sarah heard the whispers. She felt them wrapping around her thoughts like fog. But she pushed them away. She focused on the next step. The next breath. The next second, 1 second at a time. That's how you survived Hell Week. It was late afternoon on day 2 when the hallucinations started. They were doing log drills, massive telephone poles that weighed 300 pounds. 6 men per log, lifting it over their heads, squatting, running with it on their shoulders. Over and over until their legs turned to jelly. Sarah was at the back of the log. She gripped the rough wood. Her vision swam. The world tilted, and then she saw her father. He was standing on the beach 20 feet away wearing his old army uniform. The same uniform he'd been buried in 3 years ago. He looked exactly as she remembered. Strong, proud, smiling. "Dad?" Sarah whispered. He didn't answer. He just watched her. "Mitchell!" an instructor screamed. "Keep your head in the game!" Sarah blinked. Her father was gone. She shook her head, trying to clear it. Hallucinations, she knew they would come. Sleep deprivation did this. It made your brain misfire, made you see things that weren't there, but knowing it didn't make it less terrifying. "Log up," the instructor shouted. The crew lifted the log over their heads. Sarah's arms shook violently. She couldn't hold it. The log slipped from her grip. It came down on Drummond's shoulder. "Ah!" Drummond screamed. He dropped his end of the log. It crashed to the sand. The instructor swarmed immediately. "What happened?" Drummond clutched his shoulder, his face twisted in pain. He looked at Sarah with pure venom. "She let go," he said through gritted teeth. "She dropped the log on me." All eyes turned to Sarah. She stood there, swaying, her hands still raised. "Is that true, Mitchell?" The instructor demanded. I lost my grip," Sarah said. Her voice sounded far away. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Drummond exploded. "You could have torn my rotator cuff. You could have ended my Hell Week because you're too weak to hold a damn log." "Drummond, get checked by medical," the instructor said. Then he turned to Sarah. "Mitchell." Front and center. Sarah stumbled forward. She could barely stand. The instructor leaned close. His voice was quiet. "Almost kind. That's how they broke you. With kindness." "Mitchell, look at me," he said. Sarah lifted her eyes. "You're done," the instructor said gently. "Your body is shutting down. You're hallucinating. You're putting other candidates at risk. There's no shame in ringing out. You made it further than anyone expected. You can walk away with your head held high." Sarah's mouth was dry. Her tongue felt thick. "No, instructor," she whispered. "What?" "I'm not quitting." The instructor's face hardened. The kindness vanished. "Then get back on that log. Now." Sarah returned to her position. Drummond was back from medical. His shoulder was taped, but he was cleared to continue. He wouldn't even look at her. They lifted the log again. This time Sarah held on. She locked her grip and didn't let go, even when her hands cramped, even when her vision blurred. She held on. Hours later, after dark, they were back in the boats. Boat Crew 2 paddled through the black water of the bay. The moon was hidden behind clouds. They couldn't see the shore. They couldn't see anything. Just black water and the silhouettes of the men in front of them. Sarah paddled mechanically. Dip, pull, dip, pull. Her shoulders screamed. Her back was locked in a spasm. But she kept paddling. "Boat Crew 2! Granger's voice boomed from the safety boat following them. "You're falling behind. Paddle faster." They paddled faster. The boat cut through the water. Then Drummond stopped paddling. "Drummond." Rodriguez hissed from the front. "What are you doing?" "My shoulder," Drummond said loudly. "It's killing me. I can't paddle. You were cleared by medical." "I don't care, it hurts. And it's her fault." He turned and looked at Sarah in the darkness. "She hurt me. How she can pick up my slack?" Sarah said nothing. She just paddled harder, trying to make up for Drummond's missing paddle. But it wasn't enough. The boat slowed. They fell further behind, Granger noticed. "Boat Crew 2, why are you moving like a bunch of grandmothers?" "Drummond's not paddling, Senior Chief," one of the other crew members called out. Granger's safety boat pulled alongside them. "Drummond, why aren't you paddling?" "Injured shoulder, Senior Chief. From Mitchell dropping the log on me." Granger looked at Sarah. Even in the darkness, she could feel his eyes. "So Mitchell injures you, and now the whole crew suffers. Is that right?" "Yes, Senior Chief." Granger was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the water. "Boat Crew 2, you have 2 choices. You can continue with Mitchell on your crew, falling behind, getting punished for her mistakes. Or you can vote her out." Sarah's heart stopped. "What?" Rodriguez said. "You heard me. The crews are a democracy. If 5 of you vote to remove Mitchell from this boat crew, she'll be reassigned. Or she can ring out. Either way, your problem goes away. The boat went silent. Only the sound of water lapping against the hull. I vote her out, Drummond said immediately. Sarah's hands tightened on her paddle. This was it. This was how it would end. Not because she quit, but because her own team didn't want her. Anyone else? Granger asked. Silence. Come on, Drummond said. We all know she's dragging us down. Vote her out. More silence. Then Rodriguez spoke. I vote she stays. Rodriguez, don't be stupid. She made it to sunrise. She's kept pace. You're the one who stopped paddling, Drummond. Not her. My shoulder was cleared by medical. You're sabotaging the crew because you don't like her. That makes you the problem. Not her. Another voice spoke up. A quiet guy named Chen. I vote she stays too. Then another. She stays. Another. Stays. One more. She's earned it. She stays. 5 votes. A majority. Drummond's face went red even in the darkness. You're all insane. Granger's voice cut through the night. Democracy has spoken. Mitchell stays. I'll start paddling, all of you, or you'll be out here until sunrise. Drummond grabbed his paddle and started paddling, his movements angry and violent. Sarah felt something crack inside her. Not breaking. Something else. Something warm. Hope. Rodriguez glanced back at her. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she heard his voice. Don't make us regret this. Mitchell. I won't, Sarah said, and she meant it. They paddled through the black water, together, as a crew. But 3 hours later, everything changed. They were doing another surf torture session. Sitting in the freezing water, waves crashing over them. Sarah's body temperature had dropped dangerously low. Her skin was gray. Her lips were purple. She couldn't stop shaking, and then she couldn't feel anything at all. The shaking stopped. That was bad. That meant hypothermia. Real hypothermia. Sarah's eyes started to close. Rodriguez grabbed her. Mitchell, stay awake. But Sarah's head dropped forward. Her body went limp. Instructor, Rodriguez screamed. Mitchell's down. The instructors rushed into the water. They pulled Sarah out. Later on the beach, her eyes were half open but unfocused. Her breathing was shallow. Granger stood over her. This was it. Medical would pull her. Hell Week would be over. But then Sarah's eyes focused. She looked up at Granger, and she whispered 2 words. Still, here. The medical tent was warm. Too warm. After days in the freezing cold, the heat felt wrong. Alien. Sarah lay on a cot wrapped in thermal blankets. An IV dripped fluid into her arm. A medical officer checked her vitals. Her core temperature had dropped to 94 degrees. 2 more degrees and she would have been pulled from training. Disqualified, sent home, but she wasn't at 92. She was at 94, and 94 meant she could continue, if she wanted to. The medical officer looked down at her. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen hundreds of candidates come through this tent, seen them broken, bleeding, hypothermic, begging to quit. You know you can stop, he said quietly. No one would blame you. You've already made history. First woman to make it this far. Sarah's voice was hoarse. How long? Have I been here? 20 minutes. How long? Until I have to decide? Your body temperature is rising. Another 10 minutes and you'll be cleared to return, if you want to. Sarah closed her eyes. Every part of her body screamed. Her feet were destroyed. Her hands could barely close. Her shoulders felt like they were held together with glass. She had been awake for over 60 hours with less than 2 hours of total sleep. She was hallucinating. She had nearly died from hypothermia, and she still had 3 more days to go. 3 more days of hell. She thought about her father. The real one, not the hallucination. He had been Army, served 2 tours in Iraq, came home with shrapnel in his leg and nightmares that never stopped, but he never complained, never quit. Before he died, he told her something. Sarah, he'd said, his voice weak from the cancer eating him alive. Don't let them tell you what you can't do. Don't let them make you small. You're stronger than you know. Stronger than I ever was. She had kissed his forehead. I'll make you proud, Dad. You already have. Sarah opened her eyes. I'm going back, she said. The medical officer nodded slowly. He'd expected it. Then let's get you cleared. 10 minutes later, Sarah walked out of the medical tent. The cold hit her like a wall, but this time she welcomed it. It meant she was still in the fight. Granger was waiting outside. Arms crossed. Face unreadable. "Mitchell," he said. "Senior Chief. Medical clear you?" "Yes, Senior Chief." Granger studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer. When he spoke, his voice was low. Only she could hear. "I've been doing this for 12 years, he said. "I've seen over 1,000 candidates attempt Hell Week. Big guys. Strong guys. Guys who looked like they were built in a lab to be SEALs. And most of them quit. You know why?" Sarah said nothing. "Because the body doesn't quit," Granger continued. "The mind does. The body can take so much more than you think. But the mind gives up first. It tells you lies. It says you can't. It says you're done. And most people believe it." He paused. "But you don't believe it. I've watched you. I've tried to break you. I've done everything I can to make you quit. And you won't. That's not stubbornness. That's not politics. That's something else." Sarah met his eyes. "What is it, Senior Chief?" For the first time, Granger's expression softened. "Just a fraction. That's what we look for," he said. "Now get back to your boat crew." "They're waiting." Sarah jogged back to the beach. Her body protested every step, but she ignored it. When she reached Boat Crew 2, they were doing bear crawls in the sand. She dropped down and joined them without a word. Rodriguez glanced over. When he saw her, his eyes widened. Then he smiled. A real smile. "Welcome back," he gasped. Even Chen and the others nodded. Acknowledgement, respect. Drummond didn't look at her, but he didn't say anything either. The hours bled together. Day 3 became day 4. Day 4 became day 5. Candidates continued to quit. The bell rang again and again. Each time Sarah heard it, a part of her envied them. They got to stop. They got to rest. But a bigger part of her was grateful. Grateful she was still here. By day 5, only 23 candidates remained. Boat Crew 2 had lost one man, a guy named Patterson who'd torn his ACL during a boat race. But the rest of them were still standing, including Sarah. The instructors pushed them harder. Longer runs. Heavier boats, less rest. They were testing who had anything left in the tank. Who could push beyond empty. It was during a night swim that everything changed. They were doing a 2-mile ocean swim in pairs. Sarah was paired with Rodriguez. The water was black and freezing. Waves crashed over them. The current pulled them sideways. They swam hard, fighting for every yard. Halfway through, Rodriguez started to struggle. "Cramp," he gasped. "Leg." His stroke faltered. He started to sink. Sarah grabbed him immediately. "I got you. Float on your back." Rodriguez tried, but the cramp was too severe. His leg locked up. He couldn't kick. The weight of his gear was pulling him down, and Sarah was exhausted. She had nothing left. Her arms were noodles. Her legs barely worked, but she didn't let go. She hooked her arm across Rodriguez's chest and started side-stroking, towing him, fighting the current, fighting the waves, fighting her own body's screaming demand to stop. An instructor in a safety boat saw them. He motored closer. "Mitchell, you need help?" Sarah wanted to say yes, wanted to let them take Rodriguez, wanted to save her own energy. But if she did, Rodriguez might be disqualified, might be pulled for needing rescue. "No, instructor," she shouted. "We're good." She wasn't good. She was drowning. But she kicked harder, pulled harder. Rodriguez's voice was weak. "Mitchell, let them help. You can't—" "Shut up," Sarah gasped. "We're finishing together." 15 minutes later, they reached the beach. Sarah dragged Rodriguez into the shallow water. Other candidates pulled him onto the sand. Sarah collapsed beside him, coughing up seawater. The instructor who had offered help stood over them. "Mitchell," he said. That was stupid. Sarah couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. But it was also the most SEAL thing I've seen all week. "Good work." Rodriguez rolled over and looked at Sarah. His eyes were wet. "Not from the ocean. You saved me," he said. "You voted for me to stay," Sarah replied. "We're even." Drummond had watched the whole thing from the beach. He stood apart from the others, his face shadowed. But something in his expression had changed. The final day of Hell Week arrived. They were almost done. Just a few more hours. The finish line was in sight, but the instructors had one last test, a 14-mile run. Full gear, boots, helmets, the boat on their heads. Boat Crew 2 lined up with the others. Sarah took her position. The boat came down on her head. The familiar crushing weight. But this time it felt different. Lighter somehow. Not because it weighed less, but because she was stronger. Move out, Granger shouted. They ran. Down the beach. Through the sand. Miles and miles. The sun climbed higher. The heat beat down. Sarah's feet were bleeding inside her boots. Every step left a red mark in the sand, but she didn't stop. Halfway through the run, Drummond spoke. It was the first time he'd addressed her directly in days. "Mitchell," he said. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't have the breath. "I was wrong," Drummond continued. "About you. You're not the weak link. You never were." Sarah glanced at him. His face was serious. "You're tougher than half the guys who quit," he said. "Hell, you're tougher than me. I would have let Rodriguez get pulled. But you didn't. You're a better teammate than I am." He paused. "I'm sorry." Sarah wanted to respond, wanted to say something meaningful, but all she could manage was a nod. It was enough. They ran the final miles together, as a crew, no one leading, no one falling behind, together. When they crossed the finish line, Granger was waiting. "Boat crew 2, secure your boat." They set the boat down gently, then collapsed beside it. Granger walked over to them. To Sarah. "Mitchell," he said. "Stand up." Sarah forced herself to her feet. She swayed, but stayed standing. Granger extended his hand. Sarah stared at it, then took it. They shook. "You did it," Granger said. "First woman to complete Hell Week. Congratulations." Sarah felt tears on her face. She didn't wipe them away. "Thank you, Senior Chief." Granger leaned closer. "I told you that you'd quit by sunrise on day 1. I've never been happier to be wrong." He stepped back and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Mitchell didn't just survive Hell Week. She proved what I've always said. The teams don't need the biggest or the strongest. They need the toughest. The ones who refuse to quit. The ones who'd rather die than let their teammates down. Mitchell is that person, and she earned her place here." The other candidates, exhausted, broken, but still standing, began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. Rodriguez clapped the hardest. Even Drummond clapped. Sarah looked at them. Her crew. Her brothers. And she finally let herself believe it. She belonged. 3 months later, Sarah Mitchell graduated from bravest training. She became the first female Navy SEAL in American history. Her photo hangs in the Hall of Honor at Coronado Naval Base, and underneath it a single plaque reads, "She was told she'd quit by sunrise. Instead, she showed the world what sunrise looks like when you refuse to give up."